Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Cross Season 1, Episode 3. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, first and foremost, let's start off with the whole situation with Shannon. I brought it up last episode. I was like, well, are you just going to straight up kill her and then modify her and all that stuff to look like Eileen? But I was like, well, once again, I could not remember if Amir was still alive when he was made to look like the Sandman. And like I said, when his hair was getting cut, I thought he was. So either way, turns out Shannon is still alive. So, and I guess you need them alive before you do all your reconstructing and stuff like that. Once again, you need to get certain food in their stomachs to reflect what they had before, they were executed. But like the lengths that obviously, and the depravity that is Ed, and like giving her like a skincare routine, like putting like a Korean skin mask on her to kind of exfoliate like her pores and stuff like that. Obviously dyeing her hair blonde, dyeing her eyebrows blonde. Once again, we saw the lengths he went to for Amir. Now we're kind of seeing that because we kind of got found out after the fact, and we only saw like really him cutting Amir's hair. We never got to see all the other steps, and we've got some of that with Shannon, not all of it. But his breakdown of it's kind of interesting because it feels like we're taking steps to understanding what this is all about, and it seems like whatever it is, it's bigger than him. Because it seems like there's some, like, I don't know if it's like some serial killer obsessed cult thing or whatever, because there's a symbol that, like, he sent a message to someone, and the address they got from Amir's voicemail to Tavio last episode, the one that Tavio's girlfriend had, that address, the guy who's overseeing it, which I thought, like, right, the way you're so, like, being so anal about trying to get them out, you're kind of looking a little, like, skittish. I'm like, are you a part of this? And we see in his, they didn't really take notice of, we as the audience did, because they make a point to show he has a tattoo, which is the same symbol that, it's something that he clicked on it, and Ed was able to kind of message someone. We never found out who he was messaging, but he's like, right, the final piece is coming into place. It's almost like there's some larger plan here. And so this isn't something Ed's doing on his own. It plays into, I think, some psychopathy he has, but once again, maybe he's part of a larger group that has the same psychopathy. Not unless we end up finding out there's some kind of twisted serial killer, like, artistry thing of, like, there's a whole bunch of serial killers that are part of the same cult/order, and they all kind of manifest their art, their quote-unquote art, in a certain way, not unless that's what it is, and these are his entries, because this is supposed to be the final piece to it, but he's talking to someone about this being the final piece. I'm like, I don't know, like, that's why I was like, I was wondering if this was a solo project, even though Bobby's like the cleanup crew for it, and it's kind of his insider to kind of let him know where the police are investigation wise and stuff like that, even though he's an insider but an outsider, considering he's just a civilian now, and even though he's not with the cops anymore, but still. But he broke down like this whole thing about Eileen Wuornos, which I think I might have kept saying like Warren last episode. I might have kept saying like Eileen Warren. I don't think I said Wuornos last episode. Either way, he kept bringing up this whole point about Eileen, kind of almost like she was misunderstood. And it's like, rather, they wanted to kind of give her the, life in prison if she repented, but she didn't, and she was sentenced to death. And because he was making these parallels to like Joan of Arc being burned at like that, was she burned at the cross? I think so. I think they said that. So it's like he making these interesting parallels where I'm like, is that what you're? Because it's like, are you trying to say you're someone that's misunderstood? Is that why you're trying to? Like, because he almost doesn't want the legacy of these killers to be forgotten. It's like they deserve to almost be worshipped. Seems to be kind of like the motif he's going with. I don't know what it is. Like why he to reenact them through murder, and it almost feels like he's trying to say like, right, their deaths were unjustified because they were not understood or whatever. I don't know if that's, like I said, maybe his twisted notion of, I understand them and I was ostracized for being the way I am, so I found some camaraderie in them, these legends in the game that were misunderstood and ended up getting killed and got the death penalty. I don't know what the real framework and it feels like we took, like I said, steps to understanding the psychopathy behind what this means to him, but it's still vague enough that it's like we still don't have a good enough grasp on what it necessarily means. So, speaking of said address, Alex initially wasn't able to couldn't get a warrant for the place because there was just nothing, especially at a time where Amir's death is being still labeled as an overdose, and the whole Tavio and Tavio's girlfriend situation, like that's kind of Jennifer, like that's all being labeled as like those are separate things, because the whole narrative too is still being spun that Tavio's death at the very least was connected to Amir's death. That is kind of making it all gang beef related stuff, which is so interesting too, because one of the main detectives leading that kind of thing is that detective, which I think that might be why Alex and John have beef with her, because like they know there's more at play here, but she's the main detective kind of like having an issue with all of this. And their assumption is like she's pissy because this case was hers and the other cops was at Vega. It was their case, but the case kind of got taken from them and given to Alex. So you're kind of also like Anderson's, like I think it speaks volumes that Anderson is kind of backing her narrative, because her narrative backs what Anderson's saying. So I'm like, I wonder which came first. Is it Anderson came to her to be like, yo, this is what you're going to write up, this was initially your case and everything, or did she write it up the way she wants to, and Anderson's like, yes, good on you for doing that. So, but like I get the feeling like John and Alex's issue might also run a little deeper, where it's like you're a black woman kind of pushing this narrative, because she even brought it up last episode. She was the one kind of almost saying like, if it walks like a thug did, it is a thug. She has a very like closed-minded perspective on the situation. It's just kind of like she sees things as so black and white, and it's just like she lives in that territory, you know, rather than seeing kind of the shades of gray, the nuance to it, at the very least, that like Alex and John do. So I think that might be their also beef with her as a black woman, is like you're not willing to kind of just look at this from a different perspective. You're immediately willing to just brush it off as this is some drugs and gang stuff. It's like, oh, Amir was on some drugs, and oh, the reason why you couldn't find any drugs at the house is probably because he smoked them. It's like, Jesus, you know? Because Alex was like, yo, like, don't speak bad on his name. Like, have some respect for the dead type of situation. Because for him, it's like, yo, Amir was a good guy fighting for good rights. And it's like, especially because I'm sure it's like, you're talking about a guy that was an activist in a cause that is about you and me, people of our skin color. So, which is so interesting, too, considering the fact is in episode 1, Alex got called out by that dude at that dinner with Elle about the whole kind of him being a cop, and it's kind of almost like, oh, you're kind of a traitor to the cause type of thing. I feel like I'm not going to sit there and call her a traitor to the cause. I'm just saying, like, for her, it's like things are a lot more black and white, clear cut. But it also could just be like the environment you grew up in and the fear-mongering narratives that kind of get probably like recycled in your head. It's also the thing of, as a cop, she probably sees a lot more like of that stuff, and she just kind of is willing to just kind of take things at face value of like, statistically, it's more often than not when people like this, it's a gang related thing, rather than looking at it as the nuanced situation that it is, that there is more to it and her refusal to. Once again, whether that's like John and Alex are saying of like, yo, we took her case so she's acting pissy, or whether it's just like that legitimately just is her perspective on it, because it's a little closed-minded, maybe a little warped. But yeah, they initially, anyway, they couldn't get a warrant for the place, but it actually worked out for them because that detective wrote it up as like, oh, that address is like some drug den or whatever. They were able to kind of spin it to be like, yeah, we're going there looking for drugs. And it's like, all right, that's some BS you're spinning. But like the judge, what's his name, Dean, is like a friend of Alex. So he's like, all right, go ahead and go on. So they go to investigate the place, but can't find anything, which obviously Ed has reconstructed parts of the basement so that he was like, right, there was already layers of brick that made it harder to hear. Plus he added like, what was it, like 18 inches of like soundproofing too. So no one was going to hear her, which is so sad, because you're like, man, so close yet so far. This would be something you'd be able to rub into Anderson's face, because it's like, right, if you had let us like run this thing like we wanted to, we might have gotten to Shannon before anything happens. I feel like Shannon's not going to make... We'll see. Maybe she will be the one to end up making it, considering she is the last piece to all this. You don't want whatever they're doing to be complete. But there's a good chance Shannon doesn't make it out of this. And now that it's Shannon, now that's a white woman, the whole narrative about all of this might change. And Anderson's forced to change it, but that probably could definitely end up being an issue. I could see that being a story beat. Like I said, if they go down that route. Even if Shannon survives, it could be a thing of she reports Ed and Bobby because she's seen their faces, that it could be a thing of even if she survived, now we're going to take the case more seriously because there was a survivor. Luckily, just happens to be a white woman. It's like, when it was just black people involved, we weren't handling this situation like we should have. So, I don't know. I feel like narratively speaking, it feels like that could be a thread they end up pulling. Either way, whether Shannon survives or not, but more so, I was coming at it from the perspective of if Shannon didn't survive the situation and they end up finding her, sadly, her dead body after the fact. Which I'm leaning more towards Shannon not surviving this, but there's always a possibility she would, because I mean, so close. Like Alex and John were so close. I also like, because it kind of ties in, I do love the way the show depicts Alex when he's figuring stuff out. Like, right, the background kind of dims black, and it's almost like he's kind of emptying out the world, and he's focusing on his mind, figuring and putting the pieces together. Because Home Dude had told Alex, like, a couple, probably earlier in the episode, about this particular address was like, like, there's shell corporations upon shell corporations for people to hide who the true owner is, but it used to be like a brothel, an Egyptian museum at a certain point in time, and that ended up being relevant in the long run. Because it was just like, right, it might be the scene of the crime, but how do you not leave any trace behind unless he ends up, Alex figures out, because it was a brothel, there had to be, compartments or places made specifically so that you could sneak out in case the brothel, like, there ends up being like a raid or something, like by cops. So, and that ends up playing into the secret place, the secret basement where Shannon was being, well, not just Shannon being held, but where Ed did all his stuff. Along the way, Bobby kept trying to push Ed to let this all go, but Ed was like, no, like, Alex is going to know what I want him to know only when I want him to. Like, it's like, oh, Alex is smart, sure, whatever, but he's not as smart as me. It's like, well, overconfidence ends up being a lot of people's folly. So, and because of that, if it wasn't for Bobby staking out the place, because he probably heard about Alex, because he did hear about Alex getting the initially getting the the warrant, and he wasn't Ed didn't take it as seriously because he wasn't worried about them finding that room, and he was so busy meeting with that Caitlin woman and kept ignoring Bobby's calls, even though Bobby was calling him about, like, yo, Alex and John are here to look for that secret compartment place that ultimately would lead to the basement. And Bobby had to sneak in, go down there, and get in front of the camera to get Ed's attention, and also ended up extorting him for $2.2 million. It's like, that's the only way I'm going to get not only your book out of here, your little murder serial killer scrapbook, and Shannon, which he was able to get Shannon out, but not the book, which John and Alex ended up finding. But for whatever reason, Ed is saying the book can't be recreated, it needs to be got. So Bobby's going to have to be pretty smart about how he does that. Once again, you have your connections, but like, how you're going to get to something that's definitely in police custody at this point in time, like how you work around that. Because it's one thing if, like, you had to destroy it, there's ways around that. Interesting enough, with Aldous Hodge, just because there was an episode of Leverage that dealt with, like, destroying some evidence. No, I'm thinking of Breaking Bad. But didn't they have to break in to steal some evidence or something in Leverage, in a police lockup? I swear they had to do that one season in Leverage. But I think the thing I was thinking of specifically was Breaking Bad, where they had to destroy some evidence in lockup, in the police evidence lockup. So, whatever the case may be. But yeah, my going back to it is like why the book is so important, even though it's like, why can't it be recreated? But it's like, I guess it's like that's I guess it has to be a very specific book. Like if it ends up being copied again, it has to be a one-time item. And I guess it's like if you have to redo it again, it takes away the specialty of that book. It's like maybe that specific book has some personal ties to Ed that plays into the whole narrative of what he's trying to do. So it's like it has to specifically be that book. And I don't know. Like, I think, like I said, maybe it's a thing of there just can't be any copies around. But there are multiple photos of, like, what was it, like the Sandman or even Ed. Like, because like, you had the ones in the book, but you also had the ones that are just, like, I guess, copies you had. So that's why I'm like, I don't know why it has to be that very specific one. Why can't you recreate it? Aside from all of that, we also have this episode, the whole situation with it being Alex and Maria's anniversary. And when it comes time to that opening scene is so sad, especially how that's filmed, where it's like him trying to put on a tie and it's Maria putting it on for him, and then the moment she goes into the bathroom, the door closes and it just, you see the reflection of Alex just sitting on the bed. It's like, oh, this beautiful framing of like past and present. I was like, oh, that was beautifully done. But yeah, he goes to the cemetery, but he can't bring himself to go past the gate. So it ended up being John who had to lay the flowers down. It's like, that's sad. Especially because your mom was telling you, like, yo, go talk to her. She's always been a good listener. Because it isn't just about you. Going there is also for your kids as well. So I guess he knows it must be such a hard thing for his kids to go there. So he doesn't want to put them through going there. I mean, it makes you wonder how often they visited their mom's grave at all. But I guess it's like, to be fair, it isn't a family thing. Even though, yes, they're a family, but it's like, it is their anniversary. So they probably have visited her grave before, and he's probably been able to make exceptions for it because it's for his kids. But this is just something between, something intimate between him and Maria. So it makes it so it's like, that's why he goes alone. But he probably asked John to come along to, like, he needs someone to actually go inside the cemetery and drop off the flowers. It's just because it's been over a year and he still can't bring himself to go. And John ended up being like, yo, we got the evidence on the DNA of that hair inside the scarf, but I won't tell you until you actually make an appointment. You need to get your shit together. I mean, it's your anniversary, and you couldn't even bring yourself to make it past the gate. So he ended up having to make said appointment. So that's a whole thing. And, John had to treat him like a baby. He's like, yo, put it on speaker so I can make sure I hear you make the actual appointment. I mean, there's even that sad scene, like, later in the episode where he's listening to this particular music station, and it's something that, it's like, oh, what was it called? Like, was it like the Red Zone or something like that, where his wife is the one that introduced him to it. And so he's not using his real name because that would cause a kerfuffle. So he's just like, yo, my name is Isaiah. My wife, Maria, passed away. She's the one that turned me on to you. We used to listen to you all the time. And he's like, this is actually the first time I've tuned in since she died. It's our anniversary, and played the song that she ultimately ended up loving. But he's like, Isaiah's like, oh man, that sucks. Like, I've been down this, I've been doing this for a long time. And he's like, the road we all walk down, we're never alone when we walk down that road, because Alex's struggle, it's like, I just don't know how to say goodbye. He's like, you don't have to say goodbye. You just have to say thank you. Because he's like, I'm sure like all your time with Maria, there were happy memories. He's like, yes, like everywhere she went, like it was happy memories. He's like, you just got to find a way to, like, sadly, you say thank you and then keep on living your life, creating even more happy memories. That's like all you can do. But it's that thing of, right, those who are gone are never truly gone. They will always be with you in some shape or form. The example I always keep using is like the what if situation for Black Panther, where it's just like T'Challa saying, even like those who are gone are not gone as long as we remember them. They will always kind of stay and be a part of us. They'll always kind of exist in that manner. So it kind of gives me that same energy. The hair ended up tracing to an associate of Alex because they've worked on stuff in the past. And so Alex and this person, it's like, she's like, my dog was killed, and so she's like, that's the only way they would have been able to break into my house to get my hair to sew it in. And that's the thing. Oh, why did they choose her specifically? Because I guess it's like she's someone her and Alex kind of worked together in the past, so it's kind of like, right, she's kind of like a piece of the breadcrumbs that is piece to this giant puzzle on what this is all about, because now they're like, right, it has to be someone from their past that they took down that has issues with Alex and it's coming after him for revenge. And it's like, there's one particular guy, Jerry. They're like, well, Jerry promised to you ruined his life, so he's going to ruin yours. So Alex is looking for him later on and ends up running into the lady who we saw the opening of the episode. Was it opening episode or early parts of the episode? We see her smoking crack. And she gets a delivery, and it's a gun with the message "Kill Alex Cross," which I was like, oh, does she must already know who Alex is. I mean, she got the message, but I mean, from what we saw, was only the gun and the message, so there was no picture. So I mean, Alex is well enough known. He's kind of a local celebrity, so I guess it wouldn't be that out of pocket for you to know who Alex is. You've probably seen his name mentioned, his face a couple times plastered everywhere. I mean, you could easily do your own research, but we never saw any of that. So I wonder, did she already know who Alex was? Not just necessarily by reputation, but I mean, the name didn't seem like it struck a chord with Alex. So it does beg the question of, because I was wondering if this is like, is she connected to someone that is connected to Alex in regards of she's connected to a case that Alex worked on at one point in time. And I wonder if there was something like that. Like, why specifically choose her? But like, she didn't get her first chance. When he went looking for Jerry, she had her second chance and she was aiming for him, but you know, Alex got to her first. But it also turns out it's because her gun was set up to misfire. She was never going to be able to fire actual projectile bullets at Alex. He was meant to kill her. I guess just to have it on his conscience that someone was manipulated just to kill you. It's like, right, it was self-defense, but it's like, oh, also this person was never going to be, like, you kind of killed someone that was being used, you know? Which obviously Massey comes to John about, like, yo, you're supposed to rein your partner in. She had that whole point about, like, right, you need to be careful. You need to look out for yourself. And I get the whole caring about someone thing, but be careful that you don't end up drowning with them, which might be something that comes up later on in the season for John, where he kind of has to let Alex go. But it feels like that could easily be foreshadowing, but maybe it's just going to be a thing of, yeah, that's put out there, but John never actually goes down that route. He sticks it through despite his ups and downs and frustrations with Alex and how he's handling the whole Maria situation. So, but obviously IA ends up passing, you know, Alex on all this, but then it's like, also, it turns out they found the note in her home, so it's like, okay, someone asked her to come and kill, because Massey's kind of getting filled in on, like, right, everything that's kind of happened with Alex, someone stalking him and his family, and she's the last person to know about this. So at first I was like, I knew they went to the cemetery later in the episode, but I was like, what led to that? It's like they found the lady's car. What was her name? Wasn't like Brenda or something like that? I feel like it might have been. I don't remember. But that lady who tried to kill Alex, they went in her car and found like a specific. They found like a layout of the cemetery where his wife was buried, and so immediately ran there, and they found a dress in a tree, but apparently the dress is something that Alex recognizes. I don't remember if we ever got an answer to that this episode. I don't remember if we ever got an answer to that. I don't think we did. He said it looked familiar, but I don't remember if he remembered where because he's like, it's not Maria's, but he does say it does look familiar, and I don't think we ever got an answer to it, because maybe at the time he recognizes, but maybe he doesn't remember where he recognizes it, or I'm just blanking on the fact is we did get the answer in the episode. Maybe they'll cover it next episode, and I'll be like, oh yeah, they did say that, and I just completely forgot. It might be one of those type of things. But some very, very interesting developments all around. Because they did find the murder book / serial killer scrapbook, it is going to be a lot easier to convince even someone like Anderson that this is in fact a murder. The Amir situation is like, yeah, you can't deny it at this point in time, no matter how much she's going to try to. So, but even before all this, Massey had already told her, like, right, you're going to work the case of who's coming after your family, but also stay on the Amir Goodspeed side of things, because she's like, I stuck my neck out for Anderson to keep you on the case. So We'll have to wait to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.